Welcome, everyone. This is Glenda Dawson, and you're on. We are on Glenda's Dragons Den. LD today had to step away, but he will be back next week with us. So you are watching live on the Glenda's Magical Creations channel on the Conscious Awakening Network on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, and many other streaming platforms. Hoping that everyone is staying safe from the storms, especially in the Northeast. We've been getting a lot of rain, a lot of big thunderstorms, a lot of rain all over the place. But I know that, Midwest also, it's coming directly this way. So I'm hoping everyone is staying safe, sending healing for anyone that needs healing, and I hope that everyone gets by. With that, I want to introduce a phenomenal guest that we have today. She has agreed to come back and tell us more about herself and more about all the stuff that she has going on. Barbara DeLong, welcome.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So, how is everything with you?
Well, it's actually everything is flowing the way it's supposed to, and happily it's going in the right direction for me. I'm glad to say. I think that with the times and the energy that's going on, it's best to go with the flow and not argue.
Yes, go with the flow is right.
You have no
Correct.
choice, so you might as well just go with it, and wherever it takes you is where you're supposed to be.
Exactly, exactly, especially nowadays. So, our audience heard a little bit about you the last time, but I'm sure those that haven't watched that show would benefit from hearing uh, about you, how you got here, and basically what you're about.
Okay. I guess I'm referred to as a either spiritual empath or mystic. Um, and it took me about 50 years to get here.
Okay.
So I started way long time ago, actually. And actually, when I was born, there was no TV. So it shows you how
Good.
far back I go. Um, and I saw a UFO when I was in college, which sort of took me out of the mundane as to, you work, get married, you have children, they go off to college, and you die. That was basically the pattern, and it changed my outlook on life. And so
Mhm.
that's when I actually began my spiritual journey, and it's been a very interesting one for the last 50 or so years. Actually, it's more than that now. Um, I started out studying in a spiritualist church and did platform mediumship there. And after about 7 years, I kind of moved into other areas and other genres. Did psychic fairs all over the country. And probably at one point, and I'm not exactly sure where, but I started painting personal mandalas. And there are over 500 of those around the country that had a painting and a personal reading that went along with them.
Mhm.
Then, goodness, then I was ordained as a spiritual minister, and I'm a Reiki master as well. Um, I do a radio show on Blog Talk Radio that I've done that for 15 years, and I interview authors on that show. So I get to read 60 books a year, and then
Nice.
yes, it's very exciting. It's an education in and of itself, actually.
Mhm.
And along the way, I've written a number of books. I've written a book of poetry called Whispers of Spiritual Wisdom.
Mhm.
I co-authored a book with Ken Godsword before Roswell, and I reissued I did a deck of the cosmic deck of initiation of Mandalas, and I have reissued the cards. And there's a rather incredible handbook that goes along with them. That's about 400 pages. So it's definitely been a journey to this point. And there
Mm-hmm.
are, I think, 5 other books in waiting to be published.
Good, good. And now they could find that in your personal website, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So, excuse me. So what besides the UFO, which took you out of the norm,
Yeah.
what other experiences have you had, whether UFOs or spirits or entities in general?
Well, actually, I would say that my pathway has been one of spiritual awakening more
Okay.
than anything else. And to pinpoint it as far as what clairs do I have, all of them. Um, and over the years, I've done astral travel. I've done leading groups that were doing remote viewing. I've done just about everything. I've done hypnosis into past lives. That was fun. Um, it's sort of like if it's out there, I'll try it, and if I'm any good at it, I keep going.
Good for you. Sounds like me. So, now sometimes we have that one experience that just opens things up even more than anything else that has been up to that point. Like, you have a spiritual awakening, but you do have a lot of spiritual awakenings. It isn't just one. People think it's one and done, and it's like, no, that just takes you to that level. Then
Mhm.
you open up again, and it takes you to the next level.
Exactly.
So, um, so you like your um, radio show? What do you only do authors, and you read the books and stuff like that, or do you expand every once in a while to something else?
I basically do authors because that means that they have something to talk about. Um,
Okay.
I have
Okay.
found I have found people who were really good psychics who couldn't hold a civil conversation if you paid them, but they were good psychics.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found that the best way to go is to talk to somebody about something they've created because there's where they have a passion, and
Yeah.
that's when you can take them off into trails into spiritual other areas because they first know you've read their book and therefore they're very relaxed with you.
Right.
um I every now and then the show will I'll do a show on somebody that is in a different area that is comfortable enough to talk for 2 hours. It's a long show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I started doing this, I had what I call my show from hell. It was an amazing author who'd written a fabulous book. And I did my intro and I'd read his book. I thought it was fabulous. I couldn't wait to talk to him. And I welcomed him to the show and I gave him a lead in question. And he said, uh huh.
Oh.
And I asked another question and he said, uh huh. And would you like to expand on that? Nope. Um, so for 2 hours, I did both sides of the interview. And after that, it was like first I talked to the author before the show to make sure they can talk, and then we're fine. But it was, I mean, I was sitting in sweat by the time I was done with the 2 hours. I wasn't prepared for that, so um, that was probably I call it my show from hell. It was. And the book was fabulous. It was absolutely fabulous. But he couldn't talk worth a damn. And it kind of told me to play it safe. Now Mark Eddy, who does a show, who does shows on Nightlight as well,
Right.
he does a lot of musicians, and I have to admit that in my vast education, and I've got 2 master's degrees, um, I never got into music, never. So he keeps throwing names at me, and it's like, okay, who is he? And Mark's used to my, just not having the faintest idea who he's talking about, and it's somebody very, very famous. So, so those shows are on Nightlight as well, but not with me talking
Mm.
because don't know a thing about what they're talking about. Not a thing. But um, yeah, I think the latest aha moment I had was when I was in Connecticut. I lived there for 16 years, and then before then I was in New York. Uh, my son is here in Nashville, and I decided it was time to be closer to him and the grandchildren. So I moved here, and it was a big move for me because I am a northeastern person
Mhm.
coming to the deep south, where I wasn't sure they'd even talk to me. But because I'm an ordained minister, it was like I'm okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
So and I bought a condo sight unseen, and I love it. But there was always that, I followed what felt like it was the right thing to do, and never really questioned it, and yet everybody else questioned me in doing it because that's a big move for somebody who's in their 70s.
Mhm.
And so I got here. I love the condo, and it's only 14 units, which means it's a very small community. And after I had moved in, I kind of walked around a little to see what people did with their little gardens and discovered that there was a graveyard in my backyard, which
Hmm.
thrilled me. And it goes
Mhm.
back to the 1800s. And I thought that was fabulous. And they were worried that I would be, upset that there was a graveyard. I just think it's the greatest thing in the world. And I could only decipher one name in the graveyard. And so I did some genealogy on him and found out that he had, and this goes back to early 1800s, um, and found out that he had a sister named Hattie. And Hattie was married to a man named Aaron DeLong, who just happens to be an ancestor of mine.
Oh my.
So
Talk about a full
I,
circle.
I told my son, I'm more southern than you are. I have kin buried in the backyard. But it was kind of the universe saying, yeah, you belong here.
Yeah, yeah. It was beautiful how they gave you confirmation.
I
I
get
mean,
lots of those kind of things
right.
happening all the time.
And it's great because you know that it's so precise that it, it
Well,
can't be anything else.
I think if you pay attention to the coincidences
Hmm.
and the synchronicities that happen in your life, you get an idea as to whether you're in the right place or not. And so so many people have said, for instance, am I in the right occupation? And it's, are you joyful? Do you love what you do? And if they say yes, then you're in the right place. I happen to love what I do. I've never worked harder in my life, but I absolutely love what I do. So, I get the feeling if ever it becomes work, I will stop it, but I can't imagine it's going to.
Mm. So, like you say, you're up there in age. What made you do the start a radio show?
Um, well, 16 years ago, somebody asked me if I would be on their radio show, and I always say yes to everything if
Right.
it's not illegal or
Right.
against my morals or requires me to dress too much, dress up too much. And I said, sure.
Mhm.
And I said, where's the studio? Because I've done the old school radio too. And she said, no, you just have to be on the phone. And I thought, I can do this. And so I did the show, and it was fun. And I said, can I watch you do a show? And I did. And I thought, well, damn, I can do that. So that's how Blog Talk started.
Beautiful, beautiful. And now you have written a few books.
I have.
Yes. And give us an idea of the first one. What made you?
The first one was when I was married to Patrick Cook, and he was an author too, and he saw I had a folder of poems on my desk and on the desktop on the computer, and he said, "What's that?" And I said, "It's just a bunch of poems that I've written, and I throw them in there." And he looked at me, he said, "Oh, these have to be published." And I said, "No, they don't." And he said, "No, no, they really need to be published." I said, "No, they absolutely do not need to be published." And he was a publisher, so that was a piece of cake. And I said, "You can't just do poetry. That's boring. There should be blurbs in there too." Then, and he said, "Well, write the blurbs," and I did. And so there's a poem, a blurb, a poem, a blurb, a poem, and so he published it.
Mhm.
And it was out there for a very long time. Um, and it was kind of like I didn't think much of it, to be honest with you, because it was poetry that had come through in channeling.
Mhm.
So don't ask me to write a poem when I'm wide awake, because it won't happen unless it was, there was a young lady from wherever. I can probably do something like that. But
Right.
um, so that was, it was nothing really. And so about a year ago, Patrick passed away 10 years ago, and he had a website, and what wasn't in the three books that he had written on his website, I put onto mine.
Mhm.
And one of the sections I put on was the UFO section that's there now. And Ken Ken Godsword called me and said, "Can I use some of this material? I'm writing a book." And I said, "Absolutely, have at it." And he called me back and he said, "Do you want to write it with me?" And I thought, most of it's written. This won't be work. Sure. And he did a lovely job of pulling stuff out and putting it in sections. And he wrote a little bit for each section. And I did too. And he wrote the summation and I wrote the conclusion. And he published it.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, that's lovely. Um, and that was the Before Roswell book. And then I found out that he was a publisher, and I talked to him about the fact that I had the cards that were no longer published, and people couldn't find them, and they were too much money, and they, the round deck is as much as $400. And so I said, someday I'm going to have to republish them, but I can't afford to do that. And he said, Barbara, I'm a publisher. I'll publish them for you. And at that price, I could afford to do it.
Right.
So, so he got to work on that, and he said, "Where's the handbook?" And I said, "There isn't one yet." And he said, "You mentioned the handbook in the little white book." I said, "I lied." And he said, "Well, you have to have a handbook." And I said, "Okay, I'll write it." And so I started writing, and I realized that when the cards were published 30 some years ago, 32 years ago, um, I was not spiritually old enough to write the handbook. 30 years, I am old enough to write it. And what I thought it would, he said it has to be at least 100 pages. And I said, well, I can do that. And the book is almost 400 pages. So um,
Mhm.
I did it upright.
And that's the cosmic.
How to use the cosmic deck of initiation.
Right. So everyone could find it there and the website, and
Hmm.
And it's a beautiful deck, people. I saw it, and we were talking before we started. Um, Ordering one directly from her, so you have to get it now.
Definitely.
Yes. So now you put some stuff on YouTube also, right?
Put a lot of stuff on YouTube.
Okay. Okay.
There are almost 1,000 YouTubes up there.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Um, and they're the shows that I did with the authors.
Mm-hmm,
Um, Mark Eddy puts up a show as
mm-hmm,
well on Nightlight.
mm-hmm,
Um, Mary Joyce has a section. She's done shows on Nightlight. And Solara's Blue Raven and I do a show together once a month on
mm-hmm.
Nightlight too.
Okay. And so tell us more about, say, your show with Solaris. What is that? How does that differ from the one that you do solo?
Um, well, she speaks the same language,
Okay.
so that we pick a topic,
Mm-hmm.
and if we're lucky, we stick to it for 15 minutes. Um, Usually on the write up is this is where we're starting. I have no idea where we're finishing, and we've done some rather unique shows on remote viewing, and we were going through Manly P. Hall's book and picking topics from there. And we sit back and we talk and we share stories. And she has a very spiritual background as well. So we dig into things and we come up with some unusual things every now and then. And matter of fact, I found a book on pyramids that was discovered. Whoever wrote it had discovered something under the Sphinx, and we're going to read the book together. Well, not together. She's going to read it. And then we're going to talk about it on the radio.
God. Good.
So, so she and I have known each other for a very long time.
So it's a great show because
Oh, it's
it's
fun.
not it exactly. It's fun and it takes you through all different types of subjects
Oh,
and topics and
absolutely.
all that. Yeah. So good, good. And that's usually on the last Sunday of the month.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And at what time?
Um,
People can
it would be 9 o'clock Eastern.
Eastern. Okay, that's not too late. People can catch that. So, tell us more about your life, because I discovered that the last time you led a very interesting life. So,
Wow.
mhm,
Um, Well, I've done some interesting things. I was married to a ship captain for a while, and we sailed a 140-foot square rigger out of Atlantic City for a couple of summers, which was an adventure.
mhm,
Um, and we had our own sailboat too, so we did a lot of sailing. I taught special education for 25 years. For the most part, I was a single parent. Um, I wouldn't say I had an interesting life. It was just, I seem to have hopscotched all over the place. Um, I certainly, if at first in my early 20s I thought about getting married and having a white picket fence, that certainly never materialized for me. Um, and my first husband, I had my son by him, and after 5 years we divorced. And then my second husband was the ship captain,
mhm,
and he didn't last more than 5 years either. And my third husband was Patrick Cook, who was a fascinating man. He had the Bible UFO Connection
mhm,
website, and so he was very much into biblical and prophecy and UFOs. So though he never saw one, and we were in a documentary that Eugene Botha did for South American TV,
Hmm.
and he and I did also the secret. Oh yeah, Secrets of the Stones. We did a documentary called Secrets of the Stones about the stone chambers and the walls in New England, and the fact that no one knew who had done them, who made them,
Hmm.
and trying to preserve them. There originally were over 800 in the early 50s, late 40s, early 50s, and it's down to less than 200 now. They're being destroyed.
Wow.
And so we did that video and we presented it at the Megalithomania conference in 2011,
Mm.
and that's been watched by thousands and thousands of people. It's kind of fun sometimes when I am talking to someone about being on the show or whatever and mentioned that I was very much involved in the stone chambers in the Northeast. I often get somebody saying to me, "Well, there's a couple in the Northeast that did a fabulous, documentary on them." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Oh yeah, it's a great documentary. You must see it." And I said, "Are you talking about Secrets of the Stones?" And they said, "Yeah, that's the one." I said, "I wrote it and narrated it. Yeah, I've seen that one."
But it's a great feeling to know that you're helping people open up and heal, because really this is all we're doing here.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I like to put material out there.
Hmm.
People don't have to agree with it. They just have to think about it.
Hmm.
And, if I can get somebody angry at what I've said, that's even better because then they're going to go and research and find out I was right.
That's, I have to remember that.
No, the point is to get people thinking,
Right, exactly.
and actually it's a matter of using your mind and connecting to your spirit because your mind is one thing, your spirit is a completely another level of understanding and cosmic consciousness. And if you can get the two working together, then you got something.
Hmm. Hmm. Very true. I agree 100% on that. And it's amazing when the two do combine and you work with them together, because you see things that were probably right there and you're seeing it now. Just didn't see it before. So now, you said you were ordained minister, and did you, um, and of course, I hope you're going down south. But did you use? I'm an ordained minister, so I know exactly what you're talking about. When I go south, I make sure I put the Reverend before that.
Oh yeah.
My name. Oh yeah. So, did you see a big difference between up northeast and down where you're at now, as far as people treating you and all that?
Oh, um, I have. Yeah, no, I've not had any trouble at all, and it's it's really interesting because in Connecticut they were they'll burn you in effigy, they won't talk to you, they'll ignore you. And that's just not the case it is. And I think a nice person is a nice person no matter where they are.
Right.
And the theory of North and South being different, I haven't found it that way at all. Um, and so, I really wasn't worried. Um, because I don't have I don't see clients at the house or anything like that. Any readings that I do are on the phone so that there are not people trampling in and out or anything like that. And as far as, um, I do have, excuse me, I mean, I don't put Reverend in front of my name. but I
Right.
have it if I need it. And
Mm-hmm.
and you know, I've been to seminary. It's not a matchbook cover one. I worked
Right.
hard for it,
Yeah.
and and I've served in a pulpit. And every now and then, when somebody talks about it's no big deal, I'm a minister, I have my and I just usually say to them, where do you serve in the pulpit?
Mm-hmm.
And then I get a blank stare, and it's like, well, are you affiliated with a pulpit anywhere? And still another blank stare, and it's like, and I just go, okay. Um, but I've married and buried
Yeah.
and baptized, and I think that while yes, you can get ordained on the internet,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But what's your background behind that ordination? Is there a sincerity? Is there a spiritual background? Is there a concept of being able to take two people who are getting married and talk to them about how they, among other things, are going to be each other's best friends? And
Exactly.
that the rosiness may go out of the cheeks, but not out of the eyes. And I think there's so much more to it than just the REV.
Right. Right. Exactly. And a lot of people can marry a lot of people. Yeah. That
Oh
you
yeah,
get you got that right. You're able to do it. But the talking to the couples ahead of time, talking to them in a year from now to see how they're doing, and making sure that that initial love that they had burning in them, that they find it again if they're having trouble,
yeah.
because that's also part of it. There are times where you have to just have that chat. Okay, do you remember when?
Actually, I married a couple that lived well. They lived next door,
Mhm.
and during the ceremony at the very end, I said, "I expect you two to have many, many happy years. And if they're not happy, I know where you live."
Very good.
What was not a threat; it was a promise.
It's a promise, not a threat. It's just, I'll, I'll understand and I'll know exactly where you're at. So, so now the original inspiration for your cards. I want to go back to that because like these
Sure.
cards are really calling me. Um, what what was it? Just you drew all the mandalas, you channeled them,
Uh,
or,
when I was studying in the spiritualist church, I was in a class for spiritual development,
right?
and every week we had a homework assignment. And one week it was to create a mandala because the mandala represents wholeness, and for a member for another member of the class.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the reading with it, and it was summertime, and I wasn't teaching at the time, and everybody, a number of people wanted one, and so I did a mandala for them, and it got to the point where everybody in the class had one, and the minister and his wife. And then other people started to ask me for them, and I thought, and somebody said, well, you have to charge. And so I started to charge. And it got to the point where I had so many orders, I just kept raising the price to slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I did over 500, and they're all around the world. Um, and after I'd done that many, it was like, Mandalas would make a really cool deck of cards. And they're circular, so there's no positive, there's no reversal. It's just a total concept. And so I started in working on them, and it was really amazing. They became, they were totally channeled, because I'm not an artist.
Mm-hmm.
If the definition of an artist is that your work sells, that I'm very successful. But I've never considered. I've always played with stuff, but the Mandalas are another thing. And so I started in on, okay, so what am I going to do? Well, I think first we have to have a foundation. So I started with the chakras, and I renamed them because I couldn't pronounce them. So I renamed the chakras and threw a few more in, and until I had 11. And then I drew them and painted them. And then the next series was cosmic laws,
Mm-hmm.
because we need laws in order to have a spiritual life and understand what's going on. And I drew those. I wrote them down. I didn't make up the laws; they're out there.
Right.
And did 11 of those, and then universal energies, going up the scale as far as energy.
Mm-hmm.
The universal energies, there were 12 of those, and then the astrological cards. And I wanted to do away with one of the astrological signs, so I'd have another 11. But I was informed by some astrologers that that was not a good thing to do. But I was all set to do it. So there are 12 of the astrological, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's unity, duality, trinity, two guardian angel cards, and a miracle card, and then a threshold card. So there are 52 cards in the deck,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of interesting because that's how many weeks there are in a year,
Mm-hmm.
which worked out well. And once I had all of the paintings done, I mocked it up, and actually the cards came about because I was doing psychic fairs, and I was doing aura drawings, and it got very messy. And after each of the fairs, we would have a spaghetti dinner, and we'd sit around and we'd drink wine, and we'd gossip about the people that we'd read. I know it's not too spiritual, but we did it. And and after my second glass of wine, I started to trash the standard tarot because I found it personally offensive and negative. And death card upside down, that's it. People don't listen to you after they see that.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I know I could do a deck that would be so positive you couldn't get a negative. And after the third time I had more than two glasses of wine, um, a number of the readers that used tarot, and back then it was just the Rider Waite and the Aquarian deck. There weren't
Exactly.
billions of decks out there like there are now.
Mm-hmm.
And they sat me down and they said, either make the deck you're talking about or shut up. So actually, the deck came about so that I could prove my point. I did the deck, I mocked it up, and at the next fair, it took 9 months. Um, I plunked the cards down because I had mocked them up, and um, I said, "There you go. Make him say something negative." And after half an hour, they came over and they gave me the bottle of wine and said, "You're right. You can't make anything negative out of this." And so, as far as I was concerned, I'd made my point.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine had a restaurant in Stanford and called me one day and said, "Can you come do a reading for somebody here? There's someone that wants a reading." And I said, "If I get a free meal, sure." And I went, and the woman was an associate of Stuart Kaplan, who owned U.S. Games,
Mm-hmm.
and he published the deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him at the time, "It's a sleeper deck. It's not going to go very far. It's a
Right.
sleeper deck. It's not time." Now there are over 11,000 decks out there, so it wasn't really sleeping, but I just felt that it was time for them to come out again and play.
Mm-hmm.
and this time with a handbook that really goes into what each card actually does mean.
Mm, that it sounds to me like you not only channeled the mandala, but you also channeled when to take, you know, issue the or write the book, and when to really get it going, because this is definitely the time.
Well, it's interesting because as you read through the meanings of the different cards,
Hmm.
and I took the pyramid. There's a pyramid layout there, and I took every card and I put it in every position in the pyramid and interpreted it
Hmm.
so that just to show people how it should be done.
Right.
And I found that the energy with the first 11 is very basic. It's the physical,
Hmm.
but then you went to the cosmic laws, and that got more spiritual, and then the universal energies, and even more so, and then the astrological, and at some point in time, I was talking about spiritual DNA and all sorts of things that there are a lot of things in the book. I went into the astrological houses and all of the things each house represents. I went into the different layers of body energy that we have that extend from us. I went into the different solfeggio frequencies that people can use for meditation and things like that. There's a lot of stuff in there that I was surprised came out.
Sounds like the perfect book, though.
It's a really good book for spiritual development, for sure.
Hmm. Hmm. It's exactly what, like I said, I've seen the pictures and I've gone to the website, and they feel so powerful. They really feel like you will be able to get what you're looking for.
Yes, they will not tell you what to do. They will give you a philosophy to approach a problem with.
Exactly. So it and maintains that I'll show you the path, but you still have to take it.
Oh, absolutely. It's that's not my job. My job is to, you know, kind of give everybody a what if.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not time for them, if it's not right for them, I mean, somebody may have a deck of cards that they absolutely love and that answers every question they put to it, then that's where they should be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not saying it's the only deck, but I am saying that it's the kind of deck you can read and you're not going to get upset by, you're not going to get frightened by, and you may well grow from.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I am a tarot certification reader, so teacher, not reader, teacher. And so when I saw this deck, I was like, oh, I know we're supposed to teach the basic one, but oh, this one would this one would be really good for advanced students, to kind of throw them off a little and get their juices going because.
Well, it's funny because I took at one point,
Mhm.
long time ago, I sat in a class for tarot and I got kicked out because I was just reading what I felt,
Right.
and 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 I was always right, but I couldn't tell them where it came from or what card I used or what, and the teacher just drew me aside and said, "You just don't belong here." I said, "But I want to learn this." She said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I think you should be exposed to everything." And she said,
Right.
"Consider yourself exposed and get out."
Well, when I teach it, I make sure my students go and read intuitively also, not just what it's supposed to say.
Yeah,
But
it's what you feel.
right, because sometimes the card, you look at a card and it says ABC, but you're feeling completely different. And you realize that that feeling is actually your guys telling you, hey, although you pulled that card for the client, or for yourself. It just means something different. We're just using that as a prop
Absolutely.
so we could get the message to
I know when I did readings at the psychic fairs, I remember saying to one lady, "I see antique buttons here,"
you. Hmm.
and I said, "Why don't you check out antique buttons? See if it means anything to you or feels right, or look at antique buttons at a flea market or something." Just and a month or so later, she called me. She said, "They don't turn me on at all. I don't know what you mean." And I said, "Well, I saw antique buttons, and I finally realized that was just my symbol. What does it mean to me?" And I said to her, "Is there an older person that is pushing your buttons?" And she said, "Oh my God, yes." I said, "Well, my bad."
It was kind of there.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, exactly. We each have our own dictionary,
Mhm.
what I call it, and that we develop when I do mediumship. It's the same way. I'm sure you get this exact same thing. You see a birthday cake, and yeah, it could be a birthday cake, but it could be something else. Or you see a clock, and for you it could mean something totally different. For somebody, it could mean that time. This is the time to do whatever it is you got to do now. So.
I know with the deck of cards, one of the cards to me represents um, books and learning. And after a while, I have to say to whoever it is I'm talking to, this is my symbol for learning. I see books like you've mugged a library, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're buying books and reading them. It could be another way of studying.
Right.
And but for me, books are the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Very true. It's the only thing that nobody can take away from you. It's that knowledge that goes up here.
Well, that's why I tell people that my radio show is my PhD program. I find authors' books that I find fascinating.
Right.
Um, I talk them into coming onto the show, and I don't even. And they tutor me for 2 hours for free.
There you
So I'm making out like a bandit.
go. The best of all worlds.
Oh, it really is.
Hmm. So, do you have any other projects that you're thinking about right now?
I'm working on a book called Interview with a Spirit Guide.
Okay.
There is another one. It's called What If, and it goes on the premise that human beings from their very beginning have made up fables about things they didn't understand, and I truly believe that we're still doing it. That
Hmm.
that we're wrong about churches, we're wrong about religion, we're wrong about everything, and that there's another way of looking at things. I'm working on another book that is called 101 Spiritual Questions because there are a lot of them out there. And
Hmm.
I'm working on another one that is about two children who have to spend the summer somewhere where there is no radio, no television, no cell phones.
Mm.
And what they do is they take away all of the busyness that clutters the channel between consciousness and higher consciousness,
Hmm.
and they become acquainted with a spirit who explains what spirituality is to them.
Mm.
So those are just a few of the things that are going on.
Oh, I can't wait to get those. Uh, it's sounding really good. Sounding really good. So, is there anything you want to discuss at this moment that we haven't touched on?
Well, you've touched on everything. I think I think one thing that people, especially in these times,
Hmm.
don't understand is that we were given a timeout. We were given the pandemic. Now, it was bad, and it was awful, and people passed away. But it gave us time to spend time getting to know ourselves, getting to do internal work, and getting to get in touch with what really we want to do with our lives. And hopefully most people did that, because it was the kind of timeout that has never been done before. Well, it's been done before, but has not been done lately. So maybe humanity was just so cluttered that they needed to simplify, simplify, simplify in order to understand the purpose of the lifetime. And it's not to accumulate to toys, and it's not to accumulate money, but it's the journey of the spirit within. And once you understand that that's the purpose of every challenge and every lesson that comes up against you, it's not meant to be, no matter what the challenge is, no matter what the mess you get yourself into, it's not a punishment, it's a challenge for you to grow from and over. And the harder it is signifies the greater the depth of your spirituality to be able to get through it. So be flattered.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've heard people say, "Oh, God must be punishing me." Oh, heavens, no. Here's a challenge. Get over it. And Mother Teresa used to say that she knew that God trusted her greatly and knew she could do anything. She just wished he didn't go to the extremes he did. And it's the same way with us. If it's a miserable challenge, if we've lost everything and we have to just keep going, it's a challenge to our creativity. And so long as you have creativity, you've got the world by a tail.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, this pandemic was a great opportunity to go within
Hmm.
and check where you want to be. And a lot of people just even forgot who they were or what they were doing. They
Yeah.
were just going and going and going. Um, okay, there's somebody on the chat room that didn't. They were trying to post a question, but Donna, my abilities totally changed on me. I'm so overwhelmed. Okay.
Well, maybe she thinks she's overwhelmed because they wouldn't have changed if she wasn't ready.
Right.
Sometimes we get to the point where I'm not worthy, I can't do this. And the reality is that's just a cop out to avoid doing something. Um, Take it slow. There's no time clock on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of getting to understand it, one ability at a time. It can be overwhelming when suddenly you know so much more and you can't explain it. But journal
Mm-hmm.
journaling is a really great way to talk to your higher consciousness. And once you start talking to your higher consciousness, you start getting signals and synchronicities, and you know um, the deja vu stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
then once you channel, what happens is you create a channel between the physical world and the spiritual world by writing something down. It doesn't work if you're on the computer. You have to physically write it down. And
Mm-hmm.
once you do that, you have that channel open. Then start trusting yourself with what you're seeing and what you're feeling. And it will always be positive.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point in a negative.
And I've also told a lot of people that find the group that gets you. Because sometimes that's what you need. You need to change a little your environment so you're in the same frequency.
Having people that talk your language is a good thing to have
Yeah.
around you,
Yeah.
but don't create a clique,
Right.
because it's
Oh
taking it takes a tool and makes it a crutch,
yeah.
and
Right.
it's hard to get rid of those crutches.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. Definitely. So, well, Anything else you want to leave us with? You're very wise, even though you don't give yourself credit. But your life has been full of challenges, and yet you overcame them and you made it and you smiled through it. And we could see you're doing wonderful.
Well, next year I'll be 80, and I don't imagine the challenges are going to stop. You know, it's
Good.
I at one point I did sit down and talk to spirit and just say, "Look, let's cut out this karmic crap and roll it over to the next life because I'll never know what hit me, and it'll give me a free ride for the rest of this lifetime." And the answer I got was, "Without the challenges, there's no point to this lifetime."
Right.
So
Hmm.
I decided that I'll take the challenges.
Hmm. Very true. And that's how we learn, and that's how we
Yeah.
grow, and that's how we become more spiritual, really. So,
Yes.
all right. Um, Again, Barbara, it's a pleasure to have you here. And it's great to hear so much more about you and um, what you're planning to come up with and publish. And, and 80 years old almost,
Yeah.
blessings.
I
I,
will be
I,
very I'll be very interested in your reaction to the cards in the book when you get them.
oh, I will do that. Yeah, I am 62. I had to check that year. I am 62 and I'm going, oh my goodness, 80. Whew. But you know what? I'm still here. I'm still kicking. People always ask me, how you doing? I said, I'm breathing. I'm good.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you and come back anytime that you would like to, please. And when you get everything published, come on back and talk about it.
Sounds
Uh,
good.
all
Sounds
right. Stay for a second. Thank you to everyone who is on here and many blessings. And, you know, smile. Just go around smiling. It's contagious. And before you know it, you'll see the world in a different way.
true.
Have a good night. See you next week,